Resonated test pipes for the VQDE, 2003 to 6 Nissan 350 and 2003 to 2007 Infiniti G35. I'm Tony with Fast Intentions, and let's get to the point. So what is a resonated test pipe? Well, hence its name, it's a test pipe with a resonator. And these specifically have 8-inch bottle style, because they look like a bottle, perforated core resonators. Let me dive in a little detail what perforated core means. So as you were essentially to pick up a resonator, stare through it like a telescope, try to see out the other side, you'd see a bunch of tiny little holes. Those holes are called perforation. Now, as the exhaust is traveling downstream from the engine, the exhaust gases travel through the tubing into the resonator. The perforation behind it has a stainless steel mesh screen. That screen is there to protect the fiberglass blanket inside of it. So the fiberglass blanket is designed to absorb the exhaust gases and essentially change the sound, the octave, the overall tone. Not necessarily the decibel level. Decibel level is sound level. Tone is going to change that octave. So if it's very deep and bassy, its objective is to essentially break it up, disrupt it, so to speak, make it so it's not so deep and bassy. So the primary objective when you're purchasing a resonated test pipe, at least from us, is you're purchasing these to maximize performance while cutting down interior cabin noise, aka drone. Now, drone is that deep, bassy boom, that ooh, as you're going down the highway, commonly found between 1700 and about 2600 RPM, all dependent on engine, make, model, so on and so forth. In this specific case, the automatic transmission with these variations can display the most amount of drone. The reason being, if you take an automatic transmission per se versus a manual transmission, manual you have an external clutch, you have the ability to manipulate the RPMs at any point in time, you can keep the RPM range much higher, you can keep it in a lower gear, and you have the ability and the flexibility to do that. So say you don't want to shift into 5th gear or your 1-to-1 gear until you're at 65, 70 miles an hour, you have the ability to do that. In an automatic transmission, if you're strictly in drive and automatic mode, as you're giving it partial throttle, the transmission is going to want to continually cycle through that gears to get into that higher gear, that 1-to-1 and that overdrive as quick as possible. So what you'll find is your engine will start to lug and essentially come under more of a load. And that load is 3rd, 4th, 5th gear between 1700 and 2600 RPM, where you're going to essentially get the most amount of drone. So the primary objective of these is, as I stated, to disrupt that flow, to disrupt that sound. And even though you're going to spend time in that range, that RPM range, your drone is going to essentially be less. The beautiful thing about these is, as they're perforated core straight through, they're not going to hinder performance. So there is no restriction. It's bottle style perforated versus a baffle or louver or chambered style resonator. And those will be more effective at disrupting flow and disrupting sound in doing that part, but they're also going to be more effective in killing performance. So what is the point of buying this if you're just trying to disrupt sound and you're going to hurt performance? The answer to that question is there is no point. So we're going to maximize torque, we're going to maximize power, we're going to decrease back pressure by replacing your OEM catalytic converters with these. These are going to bolt in factory location on top, as well as they're going to end in factory location on bottom. So you can bolt your factory catback exhaust system or our exhaust system directly behind these on every variation that we make for every product. Everything, as always, will bolt directly in factory location. There's no cutting or welding required. We're going to supply you with all new hardware, all new gaskets. As I've stated before, these gaskets are badass. We've used these for over 20 years. They have this beautiful fire ring in the center. As you sandwich the two flanges together and you tighten everything down with the nuts and bolts, that fire ring essentially crushes, creates a beautiful sealing surface between the two mating points, and then essentially this waffle style, these tiny little holes in here, as well as the belt sanding of the flange. They work together in a marriage. The impurities in the metal are soaked up into this to help give you an additional sealing surface so we can essentially prevent those blowouts, right, so to speak, at the connection points. Tubing is 100% TIG welded around the outside at all flange connection points, TIG welded between the bottle style resonator and into the tubing. Now, for added strength, The tubing, as it's going with the exhaust stream, the tubing's coming into this resonator for about 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch all the way around, and it's perfectly designed to be like that. And that's a hinge point. There's a lot of weight on the back of this, so we're doing that for added strength. Moving on to our non-foulers. This J-bend style anti-fouler, its primary objective is to keep the check engine light off. Your rear O2 sensors, these are your O2 sensors that are downstream, not the two that are in your exhaust manifolds. Those are your primaries, those will stay there. Your rear O2 sensors will plug directly into this point right here with absolutely no cutting or welding required. Once again, you will not have to extend your O2 sensors. Everything is plug and play with factory location. You have the option when purchasing these for additional wideband O2 bungs. We get asked this question commonly. Do I need to purchase extra O2 bungs? It all depends on what you're doing. If you just want to do a plug and play setup, you do not. In the event that your tuner was going to take the time to crawl underneath your car or put your car on the lift so they could essentially plug their wideband gauge from the dyno into one of these, the left or the right, you would essentially use one of these ports. Or in the event that you were going to run an air fuel gauge inside the car, that would be another reason why you would essentially want extra O2 bungs. So if you're not going to do any of those, you do not need them. Now, what is the objective of why you would want to essentially take a reading of air fuel at this point versus, let's say, further downstream, or in the tuner's case, as most of them, they just put the little sniffer in the tailpipe. So the closer you can take your reading to the engine, the more accurate of a reading you're going to get. An optimal air fuel at idle is 14.7, as we all may or may not know. And then essentially, as the number goes lower, the car becomes richer. As the number goes higher, the car becomes leaner. So naturally aspirated versus supercharged and turbocharged, it's going to definitely vary in terms of where you want your optimal air fuel under wide open throttle. Again, these points here are specifically designed for those readings. So just keep that in mind when you're purchasing. It is a great part all in all. They're going to weigh in at 12 pounds, which is roughly 10 pounds lighter than factory. Those come in at about 22. I know it's not crucial. I know it doesn't make or break the deal here, but anytime you can save weight while you're spending money and maximizing your investment, it's always an added bonus. So if you have any questions, feel free to always ask on these resonated test pipes or any parts that we have like it on our website. Please be sure to like, hit that button, subscribe, share. Again, comment if you need to. I'm Tony with Fast Intentions. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.